Are you trying to say that free shit is not a sponsorship?
That's what I'm saying. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Deep Drop. This is a fishing podcast, a podcast where we're talking about all the funny questions, the funny little questions and answers that come up during a fishing session or while you're out on the water, even on the way to a fishing trip. Those car rides, Adam, I reckon is one place you have a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, and sometimes depending on how good the fishing trip is, the car ride can be just as entertaining as the actual fishing, especially with some of the questions we're about to tackle on this episode.
Yeah.
I've had a little sneak peek at what's happening. I'm excited about this fun.
Okay. Well, let's jump right in. I'm Luke McCredden. This is Adam Ring. Let's get at it.
G'day Luke, g'day Adam, it's Adrian from Wind Against Tide. As we know, social media is the most dominant form for seeing fishing reports and just fishing stories in general. So, is there a future for print media in fishing?
Now, Luke, are we talking about fishing magazines and stuff of that nature, or are we talking about online blogs and anything written that you have to read?
I'm taking the angle of print media, which would be magazines and, newspaper articles or physically printed documentation, so to speak. Yeah.
So it's an easy answer for me. They are dead and buried and they're not coming back. I apologise to every fishing journalist and writer out there, but unfortunately, it's not a fishing thing. I think it's just a technology thing. The space of going to a news agency, if they still exist, and buying a fishing magazine, or even, subscribing to a magazine that gets sent out at home, I just can't see too many people reading them, Luke.
A news agency is an interesting place to visit these days. It's a ghost town. There's tumbleweeds going down the aisles. It's a bit depressing. None of the staff love their job, clearly. It's a really interesting place, a news agency. But that's not the question. Is there a future for print media and fishing? I reckon a few years ago, Ads, when the digital was really being pushed and really launching and roaring into what it is today and continues to be and will develop even further, I was definitely saying, no, I just can't see any longevity or any life left in the print media field. But I think I've slightly changed my tone on it.
Ooh, okay. I'm all ears, because I really can't see a scenario in which this has any sort of future at all. And I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. I just think we live in a digital age and everyone's processing information digitally, especially now with the introduction of video being so easily readable, filmed, and just easy to look at in general.
Yeah.
Hit me. I'm really interested to hear your answers on this.
Well, you can only go off what's happening, right? So the digital space isn't brand new. It's not something that's popped up overnight while we've been recording this. In fact, the digital space has given us the ability to do exactly what we're doing right now, recording a podcast and publishing it. So for me, if print media in general was really going to suffer, and don't get me wrong, it has, and there has been many publications in many industries of many categories where it has declined and disappeared and dissipated in a big way, but it's not completely dead and buried. There's still racks full of new and updated magazines, whether you're into fishing, cars, politics, whatever it is. People are still consuming media in print form, in magazines and newspapers. Yes, it's not what it was, 100%. I'm totally with that. But I just think it's not completely dead and buried, to use your terminology, and I don't want it to be. And maybe I'm leaning a little bit towards that because I don't want it to disappear. I mean, growing up, fishing magazines was where it was at, and that's where you consumed
definitely
imagery, information, and of course, social media like YouTube and Instagram is absolutely a source of where you get that sort of fix now, I suppose. But having said that, I think there's still a space for that to exist in print form. Now, I don't know, and there's still magazines out there that are doing really, really well. Most of what I see from that now is probably online, but I still don't think they have to completely disappear in print form. But I think for a magazine to really thrive now, they probably will take them doing something a little bit differently. I suppose trying to find a point of difference that people can't necessarily get from digital, which is really, really hard. So I don't have the answer for that right now. But I guess my point is they've got to offer something. So I still think looking at a glossy magazine with high-res imagery is something that's really cool and takes a bit of skill. We know that how easy it is to take a half-decent photo these days and put it online. Yeah, everyone's phone can do it. But to transform that into print, I think it still takes a little bit of skill. So maybe my answer is I'm hopeful that it has a future. My big thing to anyone who wants to bring out a magazine or continue their magazine, I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't. But don't be afraid. Like, step out of the box a bit, think differently, and offer something different. Find a point of difference. And I think there's still room there, Ads.
This is a perfect one, and everyone listening now, I'm going to push you over to Instagram, search the Deep Drop, hit the subscribe or follow button to that. And if you are already writing articles for a fishing magazine, or any magazine for that matter, or you want to get into it, please reach out, because even the ideas you just threw out there then, Luke, brilliant, as far as make it something a little bit different or interesting. I just don't know. It would have to be something so unbelievably groundbreaking. I know for me personally, to be inclined to go somewhere to buy a physical magazine or to buy a subscription online so that it gets mailed to me, it would have to be something seriously special.
Yeah.
Because something that I guess it's been explored a little bit. It's these digital magazines, and I'm no expert, to be honest. I reckon you'd be lucky if I flipped through one full one. So even that in that form, even digitally, you'd say is getting old. But I can't see it. But I'd love to hear from someone who is writing for magazines currently, and it doesn't even need to be in the fishing space, because I would actually really like to know, how is it going? Where's it going? Is it still worth it? Obviously, if they're writing for them, they still think it's worth it. But a lot of this is just habit as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these writers might be doing it to hone their skill. They're probably writing something digital on the side. There may even be digital versions of the magazine that they're still writing for in hard copy form. But, the question, is there a future? I can't see it. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I can't see it.
Just on that too, and this whole podcast is just yours and my opinion. So we absolutely welcome people to jump on and let us know. Even editors, if there's someone listening that's an editor of one of these mags, love to hear some stats and stuff like that. My take on the digital magazines, I can't stand them. If I'm going to read that, I would prefer a physical copy.
That's a fair call.
So I guess the thing, and that's just me. I'm sure everyone's different. There's probably plenty of people who love it. But my thing is, if I'm reading a magazine, I don't want to read it online, because I can't. It's always clunky and shit. And the first 20 pages are ads, and I don't love that format. I would much rather sit there with it in my hand, actually just reading it.
So do you still read a paper, whether it be a local paper or a Herald Sun or The Age? Do you still pick up a paper at all?
Not particularly.
Or do you consume it digitally?
No,
do you have a subscription?
Not really.
Yeah, me either.
But see that I did for years and years and years, but I moved away from it. The main points that I want to know, I'll find that somewhere that I'll be able to consume in real time. Like, I just feel like going through the paper or watching the news these days, it's just like, fuck. Like,
Yeah, well, I guess the benefit to anything in print form you do tend to get a little bit more overall detail, I think, because you're forced to read. If you don't put that language into your writing, it's so easy to get disengaged really quickly. So you need to find and work on that language to keep people reading it through.
Yeah.
And that's a skill.
Yeah.
And I hope that's a skill that doesn't die, because that digital space is even harder to hold that attention than what a hard copy book or magazine would be.
Yeah.
But I think we're in different times. I'd love to be proven wrong. Hey, if you're an editor thinking you've got the answer,
tell us. You're saying no. I'm saying that I think there is a future, because I think that Australians and our fishing community are creative enough that they can come up with something that will make people consume print media.
I would love to see it. I'd love to see it.
Now, my next question is, we're seeing the South Australian government, and now on board is the Western Australian government considering banning snapper. Now, do you reckon we'll ever see a closed season in Victoria for snapper fishing?
Okay. Firstly, let's break this down, Adam, because I think this is going to be a big one for people out there that are following along. And if you're not following the Instagram page, please do the deep drop. Get involved. You'll see the tile with this question. We'd love to hear from you. I think there'll be plenty of people with some thoughts on this, Adam, and I hope so, because we're just giving our thoughts here. Nothing that we say is fact or anything. It's just what we think. But I think let's I think what needs to be broken down here with this question is, should there be? Well, firstly, why would there be? And is it around spawning and breeding and that sort of thing? And then if that's the answer, then you sort of say the question is, well, when? And to me, it circles back to being the peak fishing time for snapper. I'm just trying to just sort of put that in a really small little, almost answering with a question, but just to start with, and then I think we can tear it apart from their ads. But should there be? Well, your initial and immediate thoughts. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm in a pretty lucky and I guess I wouldn't say unique situation, because the information is quite readily available. But through my time in the retail space and also doing some other media stuff, I have seen some of the studies and research that has been put into our own snapper stocks, because it has been done. Closed seasons, I think, though I agree with them in certain aspects, if something's been open for a long time and all of a sudden demands a closed season, let's face it, it means there's something wrong. There is something seriously wrong. And I think what we've been able to do for Port Phillip Bay and Western Port is, any of those potential issues, identify them early with scientific backing.
Yep.
But also, the recruitment surveys have been done for so long now. We actually have quite a broad spectrum of data, which is insanely useful. There's no more commercial fishing in Port Phillip Bay, and there hasn't been for quite a while. So there isn't the bulk stocks being taken out of the bay. It does get hammered by recreational fishers, but handling practices, people keeping fish, and the quantity of fish, even bag limits and size limits have been amended over the years. But the biggest thing is its environmental factors. If you have a look at the spawning success rates of snapper in Port Phillip Bay, whenever there's good flow coming out of the Yarra, which means we get rain in spring, it's pretty good. Like I'm talking record good.
Yeah.
So a lot of it does depend on the weather cycles, but I think we've used that data to put things in place to make sure we never get to a point where we need a closed season. I believe in that data. It is scientific, proper data. It's not just someone making up some figures.
No. Yeah.
I don't think we need one. I don't think we're going to see one in my lifetime. And if we did, it would have to take something pretty catastrophic for it to actually get there. So I'm saying no, I don't think we need one.
No, fair call. And that would be a bit of a concern if it got to the point where we started thinking we need it, not as opposed to sort of, it could be beneficial. By the way, we obviously are down here in Victoria and we talk a lot about Victoria and it's a very local show. But when we talk about snapper, I'd love to hear from anyone from WA, South Australia, New South Wales, Tassie even. I think the reality is this is a species that is popular, hugely popular, for the most part of the country. So if you're listening in and you're a local to Victoria, but you know some people in other parts of the country that they could have an opinion on, we'd love for you to share it with them so they can give us some feedback as well. Because, certainly places like WA and probably the mid-north coast of New South Wales isn't somewhere we're super familiar with the snapper fishery ads.
Yep.
But it would be great to hear about that. And you talk about getting on top of something, and this is where I think we're lucky in Victoria. We've got very, very proactive people at the helm. Because unfortunately in South Australia, it was a bit too little too late. And
they're in all sorts of trouble with their snapper fishery.
Pretty epic shutdown. And we're recording this in sort of late 2022, but we hopefully, not too far down the track, that fishery will become open again and in a healthy way, and people can enjoy what is an incredible snapper fishery, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it has been pretty heavily impacted from various things. To take another bit of an angle at this too, and I don't want this to come across sort of greedy, I suppose, but this would have a pretty epic impact in the tackle trade in places where there's a shutdown, and we've seen that in South Australia. We've had that impact for sure. But the snapper season, so to speak, where people only do that. Like there's lots and lots of recreational anglers in Victoria that's all they do. So for half the year the boat's in the shed, but when spring's around the corner and all of a sudden the snapper start chewing, it's big time. And the sales of tackle, Adam, bait, fuel, food at those servos, plenty of sausage rolls and donuts get consumed by anglers. Cans of beer. But there would be a fair downturn in sales in that area.
Well, they are Victoria's marquee species.
Yep.
And I think the only thing that even comes close to rivaling it would be King George whiting. So it's everything for us as Victorians as far as coming from an industry standpoint. But a close season, there's been tough years, don't get me wrong. There's been some insanely tough years on the snapper, but it's not as a result. It seems to be more environmental based on the data than it is through any sort of fishing pressure, whether it be commercial or recreational. So, but again, it's just down to keeping up to date and doing the research and, tweaking rules. Like I remember when the bag limits and size limits were changed for snapper with the 3 fish over 40 coming in. And that was not necessarily because stocks were struggling. We were in the middle of a drought, so the spawning success rates weren't as good as what they had been in previous years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because the fish were in low number. It was to future-proof the fishery, making sure there was still going to be plenty of spawning size snapper as we cruise into the time we're in now. And I think 2 of the last 4 years or something like that, don't quote me on it, have been the second and third best recruitment in spawning on record. So there's good times. There's good times ahead. It seems to be more environmental than anything.
For sure. Has there been any conversation, I wonder, ever about what if we had a couple of months where it was no fishing for snapper? What would be the result? And I know you're spot on. Environmental factors are huge anyway, so it might not. But you just wonder.
I could argue that we had it for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
we battled COVID restrictions for
that's not bad.
Essentially
actually.
2 years in a row at snapper time, peak snapper time, and we're not going to know until 3, 4, 5 years down the track because, as you mentioned just before, we're in basically early November as recording this podcast.
Yeah.
It's all been weather. The snapper season's been hard work because we haven't had an air temperature over 25 degrees this whole time. We've been hammered with rain. So the snapper fishing, who knows what it's going to be this season, but it started off pretty slow. We're not going to know, but we may have had that essentially closed season
Yeah.
for a couple of years. It's going to be
Uninten-
interesting to see what happens.
Unintentional closed season. Should there be a closed season for snapper in Victoria? I think I'm a no after sort of spitballing this around. But yeah, okay. Well, that's all right. But let us hear what you think. Victorians, New South Welshmen, Tasmanians, South Australians, and Western Australians.
Everyone who has a snapper fishery, let us know, because they're all different. No, because every state's got a different fishery, and Victoria is pretty unique with it being a true bay fishery.
Mm.
I'd love to hear from some of the offshore fisheries.
Yeah, let's do that.
Be insane.
Get in touch.
Could be completely different.
Now, we've all seen on Instagram people posing with a fish, not just people though, but fully grown men, and they're tagging a hook company or a line company. Can we just talk about sponsored anglers for a minute?
We might need a couple of minutes for this one.
We might need a couple of minutes for this one. Well, let's define sponsored before we get into anything other than this. Now, I looked up in the dictionary sponsored, Adam, because, you know, I'd love reading the dictionary in my spare time.
It's one of the few print medias you're still delving into there, Luke.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you know. No, actually, no. I Googled
Did you ask Siri?
Okay. Sponsored. Provided with funding by a particular organisation or body. And I'm just going to leave that there and let that sink in for a minute.
It actually answers the question.
It answers the question. The reason this question's come up, there's a lot of punters getting around these days, ads, a lot, that are hashtag sponsored anglers. And it had me thinking, wow, you know, there's a lot of financial funding happening here in the recreational fishing scene. This is amazing. But then I dived a little bit deeper, Adam. And it turns out there's not so much financial funding going on.
Are you trying to say that free shit is not a sponsorship?
That's what I'm saying. That's what it's looking like. That's
Damn.
what it's looking like.
Damn.
What are your thoughts? I need a break.
Well,
I need a moment.
Well, let me begin by saying sponsorships in recreational fishing are crucial for anybody that's producing anything that leaves them out of pocket, whether it's national television, whether it's radio programs, whether it's YouTubers having a legit crack, not just throwing up a few videos recorded on their iPhone. For those that are genuinely trying to make a career, even if it's just a side hustle, they're just interested in making or getting some sort of income from any form of fishing media, then sponsorships are crucial via the definition that you just read out.
Thank you. Yes.
Because nothing comes for free. And think of every fishing show you've ever loved, every magazine you've ever loved, even down to, I guess, every YouTuber that you subscribe to and actually watch. That costs everybody producing that content something. And everything's getting very expensive. So sponsorships are crucial. But emailing a wholesale company for some free shit because you want to throw something on YouTube, it's not a sponsorship.
Yeah.
There's a place for it, but it's not a sponsorship.
But there's also a big difference between, you know, what people claim to be sponsored and to be actually affiliated with a brand or organisation that could be labelled as pro staff or, you know, there's a lot of different terminology. That's very, very different. I think people might have their wires crossed there a little bit. A lot of the people that you see totally out there repping brands and doing a thing are kind of contracted to that, or, you know, subcontracted to that, to an organisation where they're part of their deal or whatever it may be, whether it is financial or what, is to do just that. But I can't believe how many, I'm using air quotes here, sponsored anglers are kicking around sort of. But there's another part of it, and you mentioned free tackle or free bits and pieces, a hat and a shirt. What about there's another element where people are paying for their gear at a discounted rate and think, fuck, I'm sponsored.
Do you know what that is? That's a company going, stop bugging me.
No. Yeah, well, yeah, potentially, but it's also a company doing some really good marketing Because
Yeah.
not only have they got someone spruiking
Yeah,
their
that's-
gear, wearing their shirt, doing all that, they're paying for their gear. They're paying for it.
So does that mean those companies are essentially being sponsored by the dude getting free shit?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Oh,
If you're not seeking a sponsor for money to produce better content, why
Yeah.
would you want to be locked into using or wearing one thing?
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't
Because
agree more.
fishing's unbelievable. There is so much product,
Yeah,
and every single piece of it, from the cheapest all the way through to the most expensive, can work. Some work better than others. We all know that. We agree with that. But there's so much stuff to play with, and the diversity in turn leads to diverse content, which is huge. Being locked into one thing without any financial backing seems counterproductive. But we also understand how important sponsorship is as a financial backer to produce quality content.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, free gear doesn't help make a better production, whether it be a video or, you know what I mean?
Totally. All right. So what is sponsored? Well, as we've mentioned, it's being funded, basically, isn't it? Financially funded and supported. What isn't? Buying product at a discounted rate, being given a couple of lures, or wearing a hat and shirt.
Yeah.
It's just
You're a pro staffer. You're a pro staffer, which is fine. There's heaps of space for pro staffers.
There's a lot that doesn't add up here.
It's actually quite a complex question, and I'm trying really hard not to shit on anyone because there's space for all of it. If you want to just send out a heap of emails and get free shit, power to you, because there's heaps of companies out there that are going to send you something,
Totally,
which is great because then you don't have to buy it. You're saving something, but what are you trying to achieve by getting that? Are you just trying to get free shit?
Yeah.
Or are you trying to improve whatever piece of media or marketing or whatever you may be trying to do to get that free stuff? What are you doing? What are you offering that company for them to send you that stuff? Or if you are proposing to be sponsored and want to use that funding to help improve your platform, whatever it may be, perfect. But what are you actually going to offer? What are you offering?
But see, that's this is my personal opinion. If you're getting, and this is what I've done in the past with any sponsorship for podcasts or radio or stuff we've done, is if you've got income from a sponsor, I'm putting the vast majority of that back into the production. Because
to improve the production.
That is value for everyone. That's value for the production you're doing, whatever it is, and the sponsor, because it's making it look better or sound better.
And the consumers of that content as well. Everybody wants things to improve, whether you're consuming it, whether you're creating it. Well, most people.
Get in touch if you're a sponsored angler. CL. Get on
or
Instagram.
are you a pro staffer by definition?
But we should leave it there. And I will just, before we finish up ads, just say, if you're a company out there that wants to put some money into a production,
That's right.
We're just saying our T-shirts are blank at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing a hat. I could be. I'm not wearing a hat, but I could be. That's all I'm saying.
It could be. Yeah, that's right. It could be.
Very good. All right, let's leave it there. We're getting out of control here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Adrian Lutia, for reading out our questions tonight. You might recognise his voice from the Wind Against Tide podcast. Go ahead and check that out too while you're searching through your favourite fishing podcasts. It's a great one. It's been great. We're really loving the interaction we're having on Instagram ads. And we talk about all the time off air that we've had some great comments and feedback from people on previous episodes. So we check through them all. So if you find a topic from an episode early on and you want to comment, please do. We still have a look at all that and love hearing from each and every one of you. So do that. Instagram's the place to go. As far as the podcast, it's free to subscribe. So please do it. Share it with your friends. Let us know what you think. And just join the ride because we're having a lot of fun.